Nigel Mansell was never a prodigy. His determination and effort are what made him a winner. Mansell's consistent efforts towards bettering himself are what made him an icon. From not even being the top driver in his team to the best British Formula One driver, Nigel Mansell's story shows that effort is what makes all stars.
He locked his rear brake. Car went a little bit all over the place, but he's through and okay. And there is Alboreto now chasing.
Too much even for him. And it is. He's fainted, and past him to fifth place goes Ginzani in the... Love to be on the car to pits radio, because Mansell is quite a chatty chap during the race, and there's a constant...
When you become a world champion, it's your dream and a lifetime ambition. It's an amazing experience in itself. So to be able to do it in FW14 and to have my formative years.
Think of British Formula One drivers today, and the name that comes to mind is often Lewis Hamilton, the one driver who has continued to dominate race after race in the F1 circuits. In the 90s, however, this was a different name that was on the people's minds, but the context behind it remained the same as another British driver made his mark on the tracks, continuing to wipe out rival after rival, and the name was Nigel Mansell. But it never started out like this. A career in F1 marked by a slow start in Lotus almost saw Nigel Mansell written off, but he never took a no and continued to work and persevered, proving himself both on and off the track. So what exactly is the story of Nigel Mansell? The British-born Nigel Mansell continued to dominate, especially his 2 seasons in 1991-1992, leaving his mark before going off to IndyCar. He would go on to be at the time the most successful British Formula One driver, a record that he continued to hold till it was broken by Hamilton. Nothing proves this better than the performance of Nigel Mansell at the British Grand Prix in 1992, when he was perhaps at the zenith of his F1 career. The 1992 F1 season had been dominated by Nigel Mansell up to the point of the British Grand Prix. Mansell has won every race before the British Grand Prix except for the Monaco and the Canadian Grand Prix. Winning 6 of the 8 opening races meant that Nigel Mansell was the one to beat in terms of points. His nearest rival, his Williams teammate Riccardo Patrese, is 32 points behind Nigel Mansell. This clear domination of the track would continue for the qualifying races, as Nigel Mansell placed himself in pole position, a full 1.9 seconds ahead of his teammate. Things, however, did not start so smoothly for Mansell once the race began, as he would soon find himself facing trouble from Patrese. Giving himself a flying getaway, Patrese would soon take the lead, right after heading into the first corner with Mansell right behind him. This start would soon be shaken off by Mansell, however, by the 4th lap. He would be back in the lead over Patrese, by a lead of 8 seconds. Patrese would be followed closely by Brundle, having a small lead over him with Senna in 4th place, a position that was quickly breached by Schumacher. Mansell would not let up throughout the race, and by the 9th lap he would break the lap record at the Silverstone circuit, as he extended his lead over Patrese by 15 seconds. By the 14th lap, Mansell would begin to lap at those around the back of the pack. Throughout the 92 British Grand Prix, Mansell would stick to his pole position and keep his dominance of the pack. This would only energise the home crowd as they saw their British icon hand them one of the best periods of British dominance of F1, something that had been missed for decades. Mansell would break another lap record in the final laps of the race before going on to seize his 28th race victory. In a feat that would be, if not the most defining moment of his career, surely one of the most memorable ones. It was after this victory that he would be crowned as the most successful British driver in history. This momentous occasion was not lost on the fans watching the race either, as the crowd rushed in as soon as Mansell crossed the finish line, crowding the track before Patrese had crossed the line to secure 2nd place. The crowd thronged around Mansell's, carrying Union Jacks with them, in a moment that has been referenced over and over again in pieces written since. The crowd grew around Mansell so much that he had to come to a halt, as he could not make space for his vehicle, having to be escorted back in a van. A new king of the track had been crowded that day, if he wasn't already. Mansell, powered by his skill and superior craftsmanship of his technologically dominant Williams FW14B vehicle, had ensured that his name was sketched across the halls whenever the histories of F1 would be written. How exactly did he get to this point? What did his career encompass? And how would he live out the rest of it? Let's recount all of that here. Starting his F1 career in 1980, after seeing considerable success with kart racing and Formula Ford. Mansell's start would be with the Lotus team, in a career that would be recounted as slow by most commentators. Noticed by the team owner of Colin Chapman, Nigel Mansell would eventually find himself securing a spot on the Lotus team. He would impress the team owner by setting the fastest lap around Silverstone and find himself a spot on the team. His debut, however, would be difficult for Mansell, as he would be given a developmental version of the Lotus 81 at the 1980 Australian Grand Prix that would develop a fuel leak. Some drivers make their mark on the field immediately. Some have to work hard to iron themselves out, working on any faults to become the best versions of themselves. Nigel Mansell has often been described by commentators as the latter, as his time at the Lotus teams was marked by several frustrations, where Mansell had to manage unreliable cars and a team that often feuded with each other to make himself heard. This meant that his performance was often overshadowed and should not be on display properly. Nigel Mansell's 4 years with the Lotus team were also marked by being outperformed by his more experienced teammate, Elio De Angelis. De Angelis consistently did better than Mansell during his time at Lotus. Out of the 59 races he did with the Lotus team, Mansell only managed to finish just 24 of them. His best position was third place, which he has managed to secure 4 times throughout his tenure in the Lotus team. Mansell had been described as being very close to the Lotus team owner, Colin Chapman. Chapman often protected Mansell and made him equal to his number 1 teammate, Elio De Angelis. This protection would later be rescinded after the sudden death of Colin Chapman in 1992, and would only lead to the growing frustrations of Nigel Mansell with the team. In 1985, all of this would change, however, as Nigel Mansell joined the Williams team, going on to win his first Grand Prix in 1985 at the European Grand Prix, followed by another victory at the South African Grand Prix. Nigel Mansell was beginning to make his mark. These successes would put Mansell on the map immediately and show to everyone that his approach was working. No matter what the detractors around him were saying, the 2 back-to-back wins would make him an overnight sensation, when previously there was little attention being paid to him at the most. The new team at Williams would earn his ride the moniker of Red 5. This would become something that would stick with him throughout his career and become an iconic moniker of his. Following his 1985 victories, Mansell would find himself getting newfound confidence going into the next season. This was further aided by his Williams FW11, which was capable of matching this newfound confidence of his. The 1986 season would see Mansell win 5 Grand Prix in 1986, as this season would see his star rise. The team at Williams was proving to be a great fit for Mansell, and he was making himself known in the stands. Mansell would narrowly miss out on winning the championship in 1986, coming second in the position. Despite this, it had become known that Mansell was no longer an ordinary driver, but someone who was in the running for the championship. The 1986 season was not free from the pit drama, however, as there were tensions between Williams and the team supplier Honda, as they were not happy with how the team was being run. Honda also pushed to have Mansell removed in favour of their preferred driver, but Williams would not budge. Despite these hiccups, Mansell's time at Williams would prove to be perhaps the most career-defining of his, as later in 1987 he would score another 6 wins, including a now iconic victory at Silverstone. Mansell's stint at Williams would continue till 1988, after which he would go to Ferrari from 1989-1990. he would be the last driver selected by Enzo Ferrari for his team, something that Mansell would describe as a huge honour conferred on him, but the automotive legend. Mansell would return to Williams for 1990-1992, in a stint that would see him winning the 1992 Formula One. All of this was capped off by his crowning at Silverstone, which saw him being declared the best British driver in history. A hugely emotional moment for Mansell. The story of Nigel Mansell would not end here, however. While his time at Formula One had reached its peak, Mansell still had a thing or two to prove. The next 2 years, 1993-1994, would see him doing 2 World Series at IndyCar. He would go on to win his first IndyCar World Series, being the only debut driver to do so. By the end of his Formula One career, Mansell had scored 31 wins, marking himself as the most successful British driver with 15 seasons, in addition to 2 full seasons at IndyCar. If you enjoy this piece about Nigel Mansell, please subscribe to ensure you don't miss out when we upload a video about your favourite player. In the meantime, what do you think of Nigel Mansell's slow but meteoric rise? Let us know in the comments below.